The title of our talk today is Taking Refuge in the Silence. And I think this is not going to be news to any of you that we're entering the holiday period in America. And the holiday really means holy days. And it's questionable how holy these next 6 weeks are. And we're going to go on to a sense of wholeness at Dancing with Spirit on the 13th. I'm going to stress the wholeness of things and the holiness of this time. When when I walk in the morning now, it's so silent because the trees are all putting all their energy into the roots. All the energy that those leaves brought in for all of spring and summer, it's going into the roots, going deep to winter over. And the birds are more silent. Everything is more silent. But for us in this culture, and taking refuge in the silence from really the cultural vibes, the cultural field that we're in, uh, we've turned what nature actually gives us as a silent, dark, kind of contemplative mood. We've turned it into 6 week period of high expectations, consumption, and stress. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but we're naming it, and we're going to sort of take aim at it. Often, the holiday period is more known for feelings of overwhelm, depression, rather than joy. Joy to the world. Well, joy to the world. A lot of people feel like the holidays are over, although we still have New Year's too. Yeah. Uh, so this as all of nature slows down, our culture speeds up. What's wrong with this picture? And especially for our folks who came in late, or for the people joining us later on YouTube, I want to show the screensaver because I think it's a bit of a icon for what this period can be. So I need to do that right now. There we go. Yeah, and I would just want you to sort of gaze at this, and I'm going to reflect on it a little bit. But this is a kind of icon that we're going to spend just a couple minutes gazing at it, that you can actually let sink in into the heart. Gaze at it for a minute and just let your heart take it all in. Let your heart resonate with this. It's kind of a mysterious image. Uh, it's my favorite Christmas card of all time, by the way. I keep it, and I wanted to actually do it some justice by putting it up to sharing it with people. If you just let your heart resonate with the image, and it's a bit mysterious. So let's just take a look at what we have there. We have a Christmas tree and an empty boat. I've never seen that before. And then the boat is, if you notice, it's safely moored at the dock. It's tied up. It's connected. Something else that you can pay attention to is that there's a mirror image in the still lake, isn't there? Now, there's distant lights on the far shore, which suggest, where the culture is, what the culture says we ought to be doing now, running around Black Friday, you know, buying all this stuff. So they're sort of distant. And then finally, there's a blazing star atop this evergreen tree. All very interesting images, all packed together in one image. And I really suggest that you should tack up that image on the wall in the cave of your heart and return to it as needed during this next 6 week sort of shopathon. Okay. And anything can be made holy by our point of view, you see. And so this can really be holy days for you, even given the culture we're in, even given the demands of the season, etc. So uh, we'll come back with that image, but for now, at least for the folks watching on YouTube, they've got a good image of it. Right. Uh, I'm going to really try to do a kind of weave between Christian and Buddhist wisdom teachings together, even though this is a kind of big Christian season. It's also a Buddhist season for many of the Buddhist traditions on December 8th. For some reason, they celebrate a Buddhist enlightenment. We don't really know when Jesus was born. We don't really know when the Buddha sat under the Bo tree in the jungle, really, but they choose these things for symbolic value. This is the dark time of the year, and uh, especially the birth of the light of both of these guys, the Buddha and Jesus, are put in the dark time of the year, just sort of like that light in the darkness. And so, if we're going to weave some wisdom teachings together from both traditions, basically because these are my two basic traditions I keep weaving back and forth between, not two for any of them. And to sort of help us recover a sense of both the sacred and the sane during the next 6 weeks. That's sort of my mission here personally, to stay sane and to go deeper into the sacred during this time. Now, the first part of taking refuge in the science, taking refuge, we'll start with the Buddha, who came first, chronologically. Buddha invented the idea of taking refuge. He invented the original refuge, the monastery. There was no, he came up with that concept that a bunch of guys could take refuge from the culture. And his culture was as crazy as our culture, maybe not as consumptive, not as quick, not as, connected, but there was wars and, it's just petty kingdoms fighting one another, everybody trying to get all the money they could and trying to just live it up. So he retired from there. He built this, he had this idea of a monastery. If we all got together and pulled away from the culture for a little time, just like you can use this time to actually pull away from this morphic resonance of this kind of frenzy that we live, uh, and into a kind of refuge. The Buddha even invented, they say there's no such thing as a free lunch, but he did invent that too, because there was no overhead. They got together in a very, just really makeshift place, meditated, did the practices, and they had the one meal a day. They would put on their hats and then go out with a begging bowl and go around reciting verses and go show up at guys' doorways in the town, and they would give them whatever. And these guys weren't strict vegetarians. They ate whatever was put in the begging bowl. That's the idea of the begging bowl. And so he absolutely accomplished the free lunch and no overhead, and you could spend most of your time just doing the sacred work, which was amazing. Almost 1,000 years later, the Saint Benedict will discover the same thing as Rome is falling all around him. It's a lawless period, much like the period we're living in now. I mean, what is the law? He said, "Well, all right, let's we'll build this place where, and we'll have our own laws." The rule of Saint Benedict, which we'll come back to in a minute. But the Buddha was first started it, and in most traditions of Buddhism, not all, but in most traditions, you take refuge vows. That's how you to enter the Buddhist community. You take refuge vows, vows of refuge. Right now we have close to 1 billion refugees on this planet. There's always been migration, but now with wars and climate change, people just can't live and they're moving. And our country is going against that flow. I mean, the administration is. They're trying to push people back to where they came from. It's, it's really interesting time. Terrible time, too. I think of 500,000 Haitians have been living, some of them have been living here for decades. being deported because they just want to get rid of people. So when you take refuge vows, you take three vows. Three is sort of standard in religious architecture. You take refuge in the Buddha, you take refuge in the Dharma, you take refuge in the Sangha. Now, there's a lot of different stuff that goes with this, but basically, you take refuge in the fact that the Buddha existed. He was a human being who thoroughly woke up, no different than you or me. And then that leads to the Dharma. Dharma really means truth, it means teachings, but the core Dharma is everybody has this capability. That's what they say. We all have the Buddha nature. The creepiest person in your personal view of the world, whoever it is, he could wake up. She could wake up. So that's that's the Dharma. Everything else is like practices and insights and whatever, and those are very helpful. But everybody has the capability to do what the Buddha did. And then the Sangha, so Buddha, Dharma, you take refuge in the Buddha, refuge in the Dharma, refuge in the Sangha. Sangha is something that both Buddha and then, half a millennium later, Jesus thought was essential. There's you, only you can do this work, but it's essential to have a community. We have a community here. To me, this is the beloved community that I've been looking for all my life, to be honest, to be able to practice with people every week. And then some of you, we talk during the week. Some of us have been practicing together for decades. But this is really essential to have a community. So the Buddha, the Dharma, and you take refuge in that. In other words, that's where you go when you're freaked out. The Dalai Lama once said, Bob Thurman talks about this, hearing this, and it shocked Bob because Bob sees the Dalai Lama as, just the incarnation of compassion. But the Dalai Lama said one time, he said, sometimes I feel like a wounded animal. And I just want to go into a cave, curl up, and heal. And Bob was sort of shocked that the Dalai Lama felt like that. But I mean, come on. The guy has been in exile for 70, 60, 65 years. And he had to leave as a teenager and see his whole culture, 6,000 monasteries destroyed down to only four, and the area occupied. And so, yeah, but he's being honest. He says, sometimes I feel like a wounded animal. And animals will do that when they're hurt. They'll go into a quiet place, curl up to heal. And so this can be a really healing time. That's what the trees are doing. They're putting all their energy below ground. The great poet of this is Rilke. Rilke goes into the roots to look for the energy. Also, after the Chinese occupied Tibet, and when the Dalai Lama was still there, he hadn't fled yet. But when they actually took over all of Tibet, and then especially Lhasa, where the capital where the Dalai Lama was, they were playing Chinese patriotic songs 24/7, and the Dalai Lama sighed one time. He said, "Now they've even stolen our silence." Yeah. So that's a bit about the refuge. Now let's a little bit about the silence that we're talking about. The music I had today, I had 5 minutes of silence, little music, 5 minutes of silence, little music, 5 minutes of silence, a little music. The reason for the silence is to hear the music. And as a matter of fact, if you understand music, it's the silence between the notes that makes the music. If there was just constant sound, it wouldn't work. So I want to do a poem that is still alive for me, even though I wrote it 20 years ago, and it's called "Word into Silence into Word," to go on the other side of things, to go on the Christian contemplative side. And the title, "Word into Silence into Word," would be another perfect phrase to describe what we do here. We're using words now, and then we go into silence, and then we go back into word, but those words are charged with this is a kind of rhythm. Merton taught it to me. So here's the poem, and let's see if we can harness the energy here. We'll reflect on it. Words are the voice of the human heart. Words are the voice of the human heart, while silence seems to be the preference of the divine. Words are the voice of the human heart, while silence seems to be the preference of the divine. Word into silence, into word, day after day after day, is the contemplative way. Word into silence, into word, is the way Merton did it. It's the fast track into the slow lane of a life lived at the speed of soul, an ancient alternative to our culture's bullet train to nowhere. I want to just comment, I reflect on a couple of the images there. Words are the voice of the human heart, while silence seems to be the preference of the divine. Word into silence into word, day after day after day, is the contemplative way. Now, the word contemplative or contemplation is a little mysterious to most people in our culture. Contemplation just means, Jesus, this is the contemplative line in the so-called Lord's Prayer, on earth as it is in heaven. So the idea of the templum, and this is where we get the word temple, like we have the Temple Mount, and in Jerusalem, both the temple of the Jewish faith and then the mosque and they're always on a hill because they wanted to get as close to the heaven, which they thought the divine was only in heaven, and it was a templum. A templum meant a template, and so they were trying to mirror uh, the structure of heaven and bring it down to earth. And so that's really what contemplative contemplation means, is to connect heaven and earth, to connect the divine with the human. Okay, and a word into silence into word is the way Merton did it. And when I say Merton did it, Merton really did it. I'm sitting here because Merton did it. I read Merton. I said I got to get closer to this energy. We moved up here. I worked with Father Gregory, a Trappist monk from Merton's monastery for uh, 18 years all told till he passed away. But Merton did it. I mean, he wrote 60 books in 20 years, and he didn't have a computer, and he didn't have that much time. So 8 times a day he was showing up in the old monastery to chant or to go to mass. And so it's just incredible if you get this energy. And this is the energy of heart to heart too. Come back in touch with this energy of now the words, and then the silence, and then the words, the community. It's the way Merton did it. And so Merton would, like, especially when he was at the Hermitage in the last couple, 2.5 years of his life, he didn't go down to the Abbey when they were starting at 3:15, but he started at that time. And he'd sit, a lot of times, if the weather was good enough, he'd sit out on the front porch and he'd chant the Psalms of Vigil. And then he'd sit in the silence. And after he came out of the silence, he'd write word into silence into word. He'd start with some words, and we'll follow that today in our one new poem we have today. But that's a rhythm. That's a rhythm. Word into silence into word, and if you get that rhythm in your life, and the silence is the thing we're missing. We're awash with words. Look at your in your inbox. 90, 100 things a day of words coming at you, and delete, delete, delete. Uh, but the silence, that's the key thing missing in our culture. And I say it's a fast track into the slow lane of a life lived at the speed of soul. Some of you have heard this, but it's just too good not to repeat. A bunch of British guys, the British Empire, they were marching from one city to another in Kenya. And then at one point, all the guys carrying the loads, the headmen, the Africans, they just sat down, and the head guy's looking at his watch and says, "Come on, we got to get to, wherever at this time." And he said, "Are you tired? Is it too much for you?" And they said, "Oh, no, no. We just have to sit down for a while, let our soul catch up with our bodies." It's a luscious story, whether it's true, whether it actually happened or not, but it's true because we're moving so, our bodies are moving so fast that, and the soul does not move at that speed. So they're sitting down to let their soul catch up with their body. You can look at Advent, look at this period, even, I mean, even a Buddhist thing. This is when they do their very longest sit around December 8th, where they really, they have a long, many days of sitting to let the soul catch up with their body. And I say this is an ancient alternative, goes back to the Buddha, Jesus, goes back to the Hindus. They do this too. The Sufis do this. It's an ancient alternative to our culture's bullet train to nowhere. I mean, what's the hurry? Why are we so hurried? Uh, I just wrote a poem recently that where I just laid my marker down. No worry, no hurry from now on. I'm not in a hurry, and I'm not worried. Worry makes you hurry. So think about that. This is the time where you can practice not worry, drop and worry. In Lent, you used to, take something you were trying to let go of, uh, and just sort of drop that habit energy of worry. So this is a good time to do that because the whole world is settling, you say. It's taking refuge in the silence. And word into silence into word is the contemplative shortcut to the long road that leads all the way home. Elizabeth sent me pictures this morning from Hobbiton in New Zealand. She's in New Zealand for a few days, uh, and that whole 500,000 words of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, they leave home, go into all kinds of adventures and danger, and then it ends coming back. And the last words by Sam is, "I'm home. I'm home." And think of the boat uh, tied up in the dock. You have a harbor. Yeah. Now, I'm going to just talk about a new kind of practice poem for us, and I'm going to put it up on the screen. And then when I get done with that, we'll end the talk. But I think it'd be good to have it in the talk too. Got to find out. Yeah. There we go. Um, I just titled this for the talk, but taking refuge in the silence. I've been using this one lately, and because normally I have nobody to talk to. I'm just, although I have a young girl coming in for 3 days this next week, but and I'll use it with her. But I think it's a nice way to use some words to take you into silence. So the subtitle is, to use as an entree for a period of meditation, which we're going to use it for today. But as a standalone practice, you can do this practice in a couple minutes. And especially if you're having a hard, stressful day and you're starting to worry and hurry and just be stressed out, you can sit down. Once you know this, it's not very hard to actually have to learn this by heart. I don't need the thing, but today we'll use it. And you know, today I will read the lines out loud, but when you're on your own, until you memorize it, you could just, and this will be in the notes along with everything else I've said, and you can get a copy of it if you find it helpful. You know, you never know. Some people will, some people won't, but anyway, I'm offering it up. And it goes like this. There's really one, two, three, four, five lines. There's five, so it's a 5 breath practice. That the last uh, it looks like 6 lines, but the last is 1 line. So let's just reflect on it for a little bit. Simply listen with the ear of the heart. Now, that's the first line of the rule of Saint Benedict, which was their refuge rule for these Benedictines as the Roman Empire was falling all around them. they got together and that's that's the first line, to listen with the ear of the heart. Well, let's reflect on that for a minute. We have this thing known as the spiritual heart, the sacred heart, and it listens. That's its job. Okay, it listens to everything. It's like your ears are never closed, and even in sleep you'll hear sounds and they'll make it into your dream. And so that's the key of the heart. And any of you guys who have delved into the whole brain living uh, book by Jill Bolte Taylor know that we have two aspects of the left brain, the rational part and then the emotional part, where the wounded child is. And then we have two different characters, she calls them, in the right brain. The heart is the wisdom part, so you have intelligence and wisdom, and then you have two emotional parts, the sort of wounded child, uh, the all the repressed wounds, and then over here is the soul child. So we have these components, but the heart listens to everything. The heart is sort of the Bluetooth uh, of all consciousness, according to, well, Tibetan Buddhism for sure, and then certainly Benedictine practice and basically Christian contemplative practice. That's why you always see Jesus with the heart exposed, or Mary. But so that's it's there to listen. So we start simply listening with the ear of the heart. Simply be aware in this moment, just as it is. Now, the heart is awareness. The mind thinks. There's a big difference in thinking and awareness. Okay. And so the heart is the organ of awareness. So, what does it mean to listen with the heart, to the ear of the heart? Well, it really means simply to be aware in this moment, just as it is. And the just as it is important. You don't have to change the moment. There's nothing to be changed. There's really nothing to be done as you sit this way. Listening is, just, I'll stop talking for a minute. The ear goes on listening, you see. It's not even a doing, it's just what the ear does. It's what the ear of the heart does. It's aware. So simply be aware in this moment, just as it is. That's your permission slip that you don't have to change whatever happens, whatever arises during the time of meditation. You have full permission to just experience it all. That's what the listening and the awareness is. It's just you experience it. You're antsy, you experience it. You're cold, you experience it. You're feeling angry, you experience it. Simply be aware in this moment, just as it is. And then I just peel it away. Simply be aware in this moment. Simply be aware. Simply be. It brings us simply into just being. So this the Wu Wei, which is the Taoist word for meditation, it also means the open hand, and it means not doing. And so, really, there's nothing to do in meditation. And that's why it's a balm for all this hurrying and scurrying and everything. And we do have to do things, but sometimes it gets to be too much. So that's where I want this meditation we do today to really be a refuge from the to do list. And, I sit a couple times a day early in the morning, and then when my work day's done before supper. But it's not part of my to do list. Really, I mean, I'm in the rhythm of it because these are two times I take refuge. I mean, I'm a workaholic, recovering most days, and these two sits help me because I go into non-doing, I go into non-work environment, and you're simply be there. So, I think that's good enough for the talk. We can end the talk.